Hi, welcome to Code with Z. In today's video, we're given two arrays, as you can see, nums1 and nums2, and we gotta return this. What is this, you might ask? Well, if we check, these are the common numbers between these two. This is the intersection of these two arrays. As you can see, this one has 2, this one has 2, another 2, another 2, 3, 3, 5, 5. 2, 2, 3, 5. Now, why are we finding these common numbers? Well, because that's what LeetCode 350 intersection of two arrays part 2 is asking us to do. As you can see, it says, given two integer arrays called nums1 and nums2, return an array of their intersection. Each element in the result must appear as many times as it shows in both arrays, and you may return the result in any order. So what this basically means is that here, for example, because we have two occurrences of the number 2, we also must have two occurrences of the number 2 in the array that we return at the end. Okay, let's see how we can solve this. Our approach is gonna be really simple, like amazingly simple. The only thing that we need is gonna be a variable called countMap, and this is gonna be an object or like a dictionary, for example, and then we're gonna have a result array that we're gonna return at the end. Our approach is insanely simple. The only thing that we do is that we're gonna loop through this like so. For example, in the first round of our loop, the number is gonna be 1, our current number is gonna be 1, and we're gonna be like, do we have 1 in this count map? Well, not really. So we're gonna be like, okay, let's add 1 here, and so far we've had one occurrence of the number 1 itself. So 1 has been repeated 1 time, and then we're gonna move on forward. We're gonna be like, do we have 2 in this count map? We're gonna be like, not really. So let's add it here, and we know that there's one occurrence of the number 2 so far. So 2 was repeated 1 time, and then we're gonna have another 2. We're gonna be like, do we have 2 inside of our count map? Well, yeah, we do. So we just need to increment the number of times it has been repeated so far, and then we're gonna move on to the next one. Then we're gonna be like, do we have 3 here? Well, not really. So we're gonna add it with the count of 1 because 3 has occurred once inside of this array so far, and then we're gonna move on for it. Now, the reason we're doing this is because we wanna see how many times each number has been repeated, and you're gonna see why we need this in literally a few seconds. But let's finish this loop that we have here. This time we have 4. We're gonna be like, does 4 exist here? Not really. So we're just gonna add it with the count of 1 because so far we've had one occurrence of the number 4 in our array. So 4, 1. Meaning the number of repetitions of 4 is 1, and then this round our number is gonna be 5. We're gonna add it here because 5 does not exist here as well. Now that we are done, our count map is ready to help us to find the common numbers that we have between these two. How is it gonna help us with that? Well, it's really simple. We're gonna loop through this one this time, and we're gonna check, for example, in the first round, this is gonna be our number. We're gonna say, does 2 exist here? Well, yeah, it does. Well, if it does, we want you to add 2 to our result because that means it's a common number. For example, if this was 10 and it didn't exist here, that means this first array didn't have 10. So we're not going to add it to result because it's not a common number. But because 2 exists here, that means the first array had 2 as well. So we're just going to add it here, and then we're going to decrement this count. That means if we encounter another 2 in our second array, we can also add it to result because we had 2 occurrences of the number 2 here, as you can see. Then we're going to move on to the next round. Well, would you look at that? We're going to check if 2 exists here, and if the count of 2 is greater than 0. Well, yeah, the count of 2 is currently 1, so we can have another 2. So we're going to be like, awesome, let's add it here and decrement this. And then we're going to move on forward. We're going to be like, does 3 exist here, and is the count greater than 0? Well, yeah, as you can see. Awesome. So we're going to add it here, and then we're going to decrement this. And then we're going to move on to the next one. We're going to be like, does 5 exist here, and is the count greater than 0? Yep, it is. So we're going to be like, awesome, let's add it to result because it's a common number, and let's decrement this. Then in this round, we're going to be like, does 6 exist here? Well, not really, because it doesn't exist. We're not going to do anything. And then after we're done with this loop, we're just going to return result like so. And this is going to be basically everything that we need. So we first loop through this, make this count map, and then we use this to find the common numbers. When this is ready, we're going to loop through this, and on each round, we're going to check the current number, if it exists here, and if the count is greater than 0. If it is, we're going to add that number to result. this is gonna be it. Let's code this in the simplest way possible. Alrighty, let's code this together. So the first thing that we need to have is gonna be our count map, just like we saw in the slides, and this is gonna be a simple object. And then we have our result. This is gonna be an array, just like we saw in the slides. And then simply, we're gonna loop through the first array. We're gonna say for let num of nums1. So we basically loop through each number that we have inside of our nums1, which is gonna be our first array. And then we're gonna say, get that number in our count map, like so. And then we have to increment its count. But if it doesn't exist, we have to initiate it in our count map with the count of 1. So we're gonna say count map at that number basically plus 1. But if it doesn't exist, meaning if this returns undefined, we're gonna say, all right, just default to 0, and then we're good. What this is saying is that if this exists, get the count that this has and then add 1 to it. But if it doesn't exist, meaning it's the first time we encounter this number and we want to add it to our count map, if it doesn't exist, default to 0 and then add 1 to it, and that's gonna be the value of count map. Now, after we're done with the first loop, we're gonna have our second loop. We're gonna loop through the numbers in our second array, like so, and we're gonna simply say if count map of that number, basically the number is the key here, if this exists, that means we have a common number. So we're gonna say result.push of that number, and then we have to decrement the count, just like we saw in the slides, so minus minus. And then at the end, we're gonna simply return our result, like so. Now let's run this and see if we can actually get accepted. Moment of truth, we got accepted. That's awesome. Now let's run this and see if we can actually pass all of the test cases. Let's see. And yep, that's awesome. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and keep on coding.